Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. Later on, we're going to talk about the resurgence of coal. Apparently, it's back, baby. But first, free market ideas, liberty ideas, and entertainment, it doesn't work. I don't know if you know him, hear him on the radio, read his blog. Christian Toto.
Hi.
Good to have you. All right.
Good to be here.
It is odd to find film critics who are not wildly left-leaning. Why is that?
Odder. Well, I think most journalists lean to the left, sometimes aggressively, and I think that subset of film critics do the same. And I think in recent years, their social justice warrior side has been coming out in really aggressive fashion. And so there's that. And so there are very few people who are on the right who do what I do. I can count 3 or 4 of them. Really, I mean, across the country. Maybe there's a few others, some working in maybe smaller markets, but it is shocking how few of us there are. And they don't really get a voice in the overall entertainment picture.
I've got a few theories on this, because I've got theories on everything. We tell stories now through movies, including on the small screen. This is the golden age of the small screen.
Oh, yes.
It's amazing. It's spectacular. But this is how we transmit culture now. It's not through books. It's not through epic poems. It's not through sitting by the fireside. It is entertainment. And so we give that to Hollywood, who are all leftist, to give us leftist crap back, and we gobble it up. And some of it I love, but I get so tired of it. A couple years ago, I took my kids to see the new Muppet movie.
Yep.
And who's the evil guy in the Muppet movie? Tex Richmond, the oil baron. You know, and it's just like, oh yeah, another corporation that's bad. Why is it that our side, the free market side, the liberty side, libertarian side, there's just not as much stuff out there that tells those stories compared to the stories of evil corporate oppression and why government didn't do their job right?
Well, the majority of artists are left of center, like the majority of journalists are left of center, so that affects the product. Also, I don't think conservatives en masse understand what you just said. I don't disagree. That's what I do. I cover this, and you're right. But they don't get it. They would rather sink money into a new think tank or a new white paper.
That's okay. That's where we want their money to go.
I mean, that's
into a good think tank. That's where we want rich guys.
No, but that's part of the story. You can't ignore the other part. You do that, and then you do pop culture. You can't just do the one. They don't respect the other. They don't respect the pop culture.
At the Independence
side of
Institute,
things.
we understand what I think the left gets so well, which is politics is a lagging indicator. Culture is the leading indicator. And for the last half century, we know where culture has been going, spurred on greatly by media and entertainment, who push an agenda. There's another part of this. Let me run this idea by you. I think our brains are wired differently. In that, if you want to build a bridge, do you want a movie actor building the bridge, or you want an engineer building the bridge? Our minds don't create the same sort of stuff that others do. And my pet peeve, I cannot stand the Lee Greenwood song, Proud to be an American. It's a two-dimensional, boring song, and it's in your face, and it's so black and white, and there it is. Whereas the left, the Sting will sing about if the Russians love their children too. Right. I mean, they'll weave their stories into their songs and into their stories. When we try to do something creative, we push the message so hard that the vehicle just stinks. It's boring. It's not funny when we try to be funny.
Well, I think there is a left and right brain argument to be made here, but I don't think that there are less creative conservatives. I don't think. I mean, why would that be? I understand what you're saying, but I think you can be right of center and have that sort of creative firepower in your brain. Part of it is that people on the right now don't get the opportunities. I mean, I talk to so many actors. Some of them don't want their names to be seen, mentioned about, well, if they say who they are, then they get less work. So those people are not going to go making great stories about right of center, tales, because they'd be ostracized in the industry. They're lucky to get jobs. That's all they want.
I mean, I mentioned to you 30 Rock, which I just think is a hysterical show, mostly done by leftists, but they lead with the joke first. And then they put in the jabs or whatever later. The only other show that I think really does a great job from the libertarian point of view is South Park. South Park is amazing in that they're raunchy, but they're funny. They lead with the jokes, which is politically incorrect, and they shine a light on the PC madness that goes on and the leftist madness. And they'll take shots at Republicans as well, but they seem to be the only guys that I noticed that really can put out an agenda and make it work?
They can because they're talented, they're fearless, and they've got the track record to back them up. So they can go to places now where they maybe couldn't have 20 years ago or 10 or whatever. They're sort of blossoming because they had that clout, they've got the reputation. But yeah, there aren't that many venues like that. And what I'm amazed by is that there are so many ripe targets on the left. I look at the late night landscape and I'm thinking, my goodness, you're missing this, you're missing that. This could be a whole series of jokes, but no, it's like Trump, Republican, GOP. And I get
and
that.
It's boring.
And
I mean, after a while, you
it's so
get
predictable.
It. Right.
Even I'm not a liberal, but if I were a liberal person watching The Late Show or any of those late night talk shows, I know exactly what the monologue is going to be. It's going to be outrage. It's going to be the same targets. It's going to be the same type of humor. It's going to be the orange spray painted Trump. It's going to be certain GOP gags. I mean, even if I agreed with every element of that, I'd be turning the channel. I'm exhausted. I'm bored.
There were two versions of this. Let me throw it out. One was the Daily Show with Jon Stewart, and all he did was, show a film clip and then do this to the camera.
Yeah, that's right.
And then drop a few f-bombs, and everybody laughs, and it's always the same joke. The Colbert Report was really, I thought, spectacularly well done for a leftist piece.
Yeah.
He mocked Republicans by playing basically Bill O'Reilly
Yes.
and playing a role, and it was much more subtle, and it was great. And now that he's doing his own show, without that, you see who he really is, and now he's doing what Jon Stewart did, which
That's
was
right.
like, oh my God, did you see that? It's not. It's been done. The first 500 times were funny, but it doesn't work. Talk to me a little bit about movies, because movies, I believe, are the stories that bind us together.
Oh yes.
Let me make you an offer you can't refuse. Are there libertarian-leaning movies that have those messages?
There are, and there have been over the years. They're certainly not as overt as you might think, and often they're very successful. The Lego Movie talked about battling conformity, and the Captain America: Winter Soldier talked about maybe spying isn't a good thing. Maybe we shouldn't be spied upon within the context of a rock'em sock'em action movie with great performances and fun dialogue, and it had everything you want in the movie. And that.
Those messages, let me take those two movies, they also overlap with leftist messages.
Sometimes, yes.
Conformity is bad. We keep hearing that, but really I think the left wants conformity on the, they want diversity. Yeah, they want diversity on the left, but don't bring in any right. But so we get that.
Yeah.
Don't spy on folks with the Winter Soldier. That was an anti-NSA ad too, which a lot of I agree with, but I think a lot of leftists do as well. Give me some more of these, because
well, I had a story on my website about this recently. The movie Miracle, about Herb Brooks, The Miracle on Ice. One of the things that the coach wanted to do was wanted to hire not just the best players, but the ones who had the most spirit, the most tenacity, the most kind of go-get-'emness, and for lack of a better phrase. And that was important because sort of the overall merit of someone, and that matters to people on the right and libertarians. It's the quality. It's a meritocracy. So that's another example there. One of the movies that I love, which got no attention and still doesn't, even though I think it's on one of the streaming services, is called Still Mine, with one of the most progressive actors around, called James Cromwell. He's an older gentleman, and his wife is older as well. She is in failing health, and he wants to build a home specifically to help her in her frail condition. And he meets all sorts of red tape, and he battles and he battles. And this is a guy who's a great builder, but he can't because the man doesn't want him. Now, the actor is far left as you come, but you know what? This is a leading man role. He's a guy who's in his maybe 60s or 70s. He doesn't get many choices that way, and he pounced on it. And a lot of actors
What's
will
the name
do
of this one? I haven't seen
Still
this one.
Mine. And
this is still my property. This is what we call castle doctrine.
Exactly.
This is mine.
And it's maybe 5 years old or so, and it kind of crept out into the public arena, went away, didn't make any money. But it's a very good movie. It definitely has that message there. So
a lot of libertarians point to things like Ghostbusters. There's a problem, the free market comes up with a solution, and then the EPA comes in and screws everything up.
And they're the bad guys.
And they're the bad guys. We like that. Firefly, the series, seemed to get a huge libertarian following. I'm not too sure why. Tell me why.
I'm not as familiar with that. I never watched the original series. I did see the movie Serenity, which was a film adaptation. It's sort of about freedom. It's about sort of kind of banding together and fighting the powers that be. I get that generally.
I think it had a central command and control government and people on the fringe who weren't always as savory, but they could do what they wanted because they were far away from the centralized place. So it's basically escaping to Wyoming. That's the story.
Yeah.
Give me the top ones. If if people are looking for a list of cool movies to see that have that flavor, that, you know what, it's okay to have some individual rights. It's okay to take on the system. Give me some recommendations.
You know, the one that people always point to, the last couple of years at least, is Dallas Buyers Club, which was based on a true story about a man who was dying of AIDS and couldn't get the drugs he needed to save his life because all the different FDA regulations were stopping him. And he created his own little market there, the Dallas Buyers Club, to help people like him who were helpless, who had nowhere else to turn. So I think in the most recent years, that's a great example.
Again, Hollywood allowed that, probably not even knowing the message that they were doing, because he had AIDS, he had HIV.
Right.
And so to fight the man for that is fine, but you don't see it with the same sort of possible cancer drugs that people want to use and other things that they're waiting for, which is why many states, and I hope Colorado becomes one of them, starts to pass right to try laws so people can try things. But again, it's because the Hollywood, I think, was tricked into making a free market.
That's right.
A government is bad movie.
That's a great point. And I think a lot of stories that could be told today are not being told. I mean, how many documentaries or films are being made now or going into production about Venezuela and what's going on there? I'd guess zero. If I'm wrong, I'd be shocked. But there are so many tragic stories, so many maybe heroic stories of people fighting the powers that be, just the suffering that's going on. Those are all great dramatic elements. I don't mean to minimize what's going on there, but if you're a storyteller, you should be attracted to that. But you're not going to see that because that's about socialism and its decay. There are so many stories that just aren't told because of that. The poor woman in, I think, San Francisco who was killed by an illegal immigrant, Kate Stanley? Forgive me for getting the name wrong. It's a horrible story. But her father has been very active in trying to change the laws and to fight on his late daughter's behalf because of what happened. That's an amazing story, isn't it? Why can't that be told? But no one in Hollywood would touch that story. So I do agree that sometimes you need sort of the sugar to make the story go down. For the AIDS story, Dallas Buyers Club, it was the fact that he did have AIDS, which is sort of an issue on the left of center sometimes, and that it brought in a bigger story about bureaucracy and government and regulation and how that's bad at times. So it's just interesting how it's told.
Throw out a couple more,
and
then I want to ask you a question. So give me a couple lists. I gave you one. I'm trying to remember what it was.
Gattaca. You tell me.
Well, I remember Gattaca, which was I love science fiction.
Yeah.
I love science when it's real science fiction, not just laser cannons. And Gattaca was a society where genetic engineering was the norm, and people who weren't born that way were second-class citizens. And it showed the story of one guy who was one of those guys, but still wanted to live the other life, and through determination did so.
Yep. One of the stories that, I've never seen this one. It's called The Hunt with Mads Mikkelsen. That was another one that was recommended on my site by a libertarian to talk about sort of movies that kind of have that sort of spirit about nonconformity. That's a really big issue. You mentioned before, and I want to get back to this, about the Lego movie. We talked about how it's about battling conformity, but the villain was President Business. So their cover was, let's attack corporations. So that's the way it snuck in. So even though libertarians can look at the movie and go, oh my goodness, that's a libertarian theme. Well, how do they get it in there?
A lot of those are Rorschach tests. Depending on your leanings, you're going to see. All right. Rock and roll and the music scene has changed because it used to be there were just a few record companies. They owned the studios. You'd go to EMI, you go to Abbey Road, you'd go do it. Now anybody's garage can become a studio to make music, and you're seeing this wild world of it. The same thing is true when it comes to entertainment. Camera costs have gone down, software has gone up. Regular people can make remarkable products. Is that going to be the savior of this?
Potentially. Because the technology bar is lowered so much, and the ability to kind of spread your information far and wide is so massive. Justin Bieber, part of his early years was getting on YouTube and getting a lot of followers. You can have a YouTube channel. You don't need a fancy background. You just have yourself talking about some issue you're passionate about. You get a following, and all of a sudden, people will start to come to you.
That's good for personality, but it's not good for storytelling. I'm talking about actually.
But that's the same venue, though. I mean, if I want to do a web series, and I've got a couple of buddies, then we make the story, we put it on YouTube, we get a lot of attention, then we get more attention, and then we get more resources.
Of Kevin Smith, who did all these great movies, but he did them on a shoestring. The first one being Clerks, which looks like it was made on a shoestring.
That's right.
But it shot it. All right, people want to get more information, want to follow you. Where do they go?
Sure. The website is hollywoodintoto.com. And the Twitter handle is @HollywoodInToto. And the podcast is the Hollywood in Toto podcast on iTunes and Spreaker and TuneIn and iHeartMedia, everywhere.
Christian, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Stay tuned.